and welcome to the very first episode of Screenplay Therapy. I'm Ashley,
And I'm Miguel.
and we are very excited to get this started. This has been a long time coming, and we are here to share with you our personal reviews and analyzing movies of mental health themes and situations. And to get started, we're going to be diving in with The Hunger Games. Not one of the movies in particular, just kind of look at the first four movies. So The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2. As Miguel and I have recently watched those movies, and so that was a little bit more fresh on our minds, and we're going to be discussing fear and hope. So, for starters, within this conversation of this, for a little bit of context, so I am a mental health counselor, and my husband here is joining me on these conversations. So as we get this conversation started, anything that you want to address? Any thoughts? Yes. You're the only other person in the room. I'm not talking to our dog, so.
Yeah, it's just a time to discuss, reflect, and really just talk about the different topics that we can relate and we can use for better our lives and really understand the message or messages behind films, behind any movie. So really reflection.
Yes. So, The Hunger Games, and specifically, I have put a lot of thought into one specific line from the very first movie, and I've always had this on my mind. I think from even when I just read the book. So, for years, I have thought about there was a conversation in the first one with President Snow and Seneca. Seneca Crane. And Snow is saying how he says hope is the only thing greater than fear. And he begins to talk about how a little hope is effective and a lot of hope can be dangerous. And he tells Seneca to contain it. And so in referencing the hope that Katniss is providing to all the people in the districts, she's becoming the symbol of hope. But the part where he says hope being the only thing greater than fear really stood out to me for years. And I think it stood out to me because one of my primary emotions or driving emotions has been fear. Not that emotion should drive us, but that's something that can be a whole other conversation for another time. But just primary emotions, an emotion I tend to feel a lot in my entire life has been fear. And something I always ask my clients in our very first sessions is, what is something that brings you hope? What is something that keeps you going? So I've always had that in the back of my mind that I thought it was interesting, unique that he says that. And then when we were watching Mockingjay Part 1, and Beatty is talking about the hijacking that PETA is going through. So this is like before he gets rescued from the Capitol, and he says how our brains are hardwired to remember fear the best. I'm going to actually pull up this note. I made a note on it when we were watching the movie. Okay, he says, fear is the most difficult thing to overcome. We're hardwired to remember fear the best. And then in Mockingjay Part 2, Plutarch is talking about the song, The Hanging Tree. And if you're familiar with the song, you know how it goes. And it's all about being at the hanging tree with your loved one. And there's that line, wear a necklace of hope side by side with me. And he says, Plutarch says that originally the line was wear a necklace of rope side by side with me. And he changed it to hope. So almost like death, the release, death would give the release of the fear. And that's like the sign of hope. And then the other part that I had made a specific note on was at the very end of Mockingjay Part 2, Katniss and Peeta are married. They have their kids, and she's holding like her baby daughter. And her daughter is crying, like wakes up from a nightmare, and she starts saying how she makes a list in her mind of all the things that she has seen, all the good things that she has seen people do. And she talks about how it gets tedious after a while, but it works. So those are like the main points that I'm going to mention right now. And then I want to like really dive into it more. But Miguelito, what are...
Yeah, I think my initial thoughts uh, on the movie and the books too. I mean, I can honestly relate to the sequence of the story, uh, and how you see a lot of issues, society issues, and oppression by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I think we can all relate to, especially in today's era with politics being such a big deal in the new generations. So I think the oppression of the government in the Hunger Games uh, is really what is driving the whole movie. Uh, but I think at the same time, I mean, that's the sequence of what the author really wants to put in. So there is a sense of hope. There's a sense of trying to pursue in a way. I mean, in our society today, it could be the American dream, just as the people in the movie in the books, they wanted a society without the games. They wanted freedom. In today's world, we also want, to live a life where we have a freedom to choose and to do what the law says. Uh, and so it gets very tricky because I think we can see in the movie how there's manipulation of different rules and different laws. For example, like President Snow is pretty much a dictatorship that wants to dictate and do his will. And I think that's something that we can all relate to uh, in this society, and something that Generation Z really understands, as we all have grown up watching and reading these type of books.
Yeah. And I hear it from a lot of my clients too, when some of them get very like into politics and like our like reality of politics, and they'll talk about fear and the things that they're scared of, and I see it all over social media. And just the idea of hope is something that it's so okay. Going into what BD said about fear is the hardest thing to overcome, and we're hardwired to remember it the best. And I want to touch on that specifically because it was something that just really stood out to me, and that I've straight up shared with clients before. I've shared with clients whether it was trauma that has trauma responses that they have of situations that they have endured, or they're just naturally more scared of a person. And when we think back to situations when they're in our life, so I'll even like ask you this, Miguel, thinking back to times when you were little, and thinking back to, and maybe this would be true for you, maybe it wouldn't, but thinking back to different situations within your life growing up, thinking back to different emotions that would be tied to that. How often do you remember times when maybe you were scared versus when maybe you were happy or just content? Like, I know, like, yes, you'll have your moments that you'll recall of, oh, I remember receiving like this for a gift or this funny moment or something that happened, but how often were you scared? I'm not talking necessarily, does it have to be like, oh, I was absolutely terrified, but it could have just been, oh, I was a little nervous about this, but how much stronger, how much more do the memories that you have when you think about when you're scared, or would that be true for you? Because I know some people aren't naturally scared people per se, but I'm curious, like, thinking back to just any memories growing up or even anything recent.
Yeah, I would say, in my case, I mean, I don't think fear
Okay.
was ever a big thing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think I come from a background that is more of a competition, and so
Okay. Mm-hmm.
the fear that I would portray having, it would turn into let's compete, let's
Okay. Yeah.
stand up and let's fight.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think if I was one of the characters in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
in series, I will be the one, standing up to fight against the person in snow, uh, and compete. Because I really think that in my case, growing up, the fear really turned into get up and compete. Get up and
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah. I think I would not have made it very far within the world of Panem. I don't think I think I would have become more complacent and would have continued to hope that the government themselves would change their mind, that President Snow would actually be correct, or like if I was in one of the districts, I feel like I think I would have been much more complacent and scared on that end, and I just wouldn't have made it very far. But taking that from just how I grew up, and while I have so many memories throughout my whole childhood, and even all the way back to like those vague memories that are kind of fuzzy when you're like 3 and 4 years old, so many that are full of happiness and joy. But I also can remember so many moments, and sometimes they're almost easier to remember moments when I was maybe like scared or sad or something like that. And that was just what struck me, was how in pieces that like we're hardwired to remember it best. Because while it's a movie, but it definitely got me thinking as to how true is that for people like in reality outside of the Hunger Games movies. Like, how true is it that fear is something that you may feel like is hardwired to remember best? So that's where I know that, like, with you, it's not as much of a thing like how you were just saying. It was more in like a competitive sense, and then that would turn into like, let's fight. And for me, it would be more of like, let's stay quiet and observe before, because what if I'm wrong? And then there would be a fear of, not just the fear of what I know, but fear of, is what I know wrong? And it would just like spiral. And maybe I do have anxiety, but um yeah. And then just hearing it's the hardest to overcome. And I've shared that with a couple of clients, and I've thought about it myself, because it really is one of the hardest things to overcome. And I know this isn't the movie that we're talking about, but it reminded me of this line from Spider-Man No Way Home, when MJ would always be like, expect the worst and then you won't be disappointed. And there was a part of me that was like, ooh, that's so good. I was like, that's not the way to think about it. Like, I just accepted that. And then later she was like, no, like, we're not going to be expecting the worst here. And I think that, yeah, fear is really a hard thing to overcome. It's like the opposite of fear is going to be that hope. And in the Hunger Games, the hope was, it was Katniss. She became the symbol of hope. But I feel like that would also just be a lot of burden. Like, she didn't ask for that. She didn't ask to be thrown into the games. She went into the games to stand up for her sister, Prim, to take her sister's place. She volunteered as tribute because she didn't want Prim to be reaped. And then she was just angry, and Haymitch had to, like, help coach her, and Effie helped coach her, and even when she would seem like she was, things were clicking as far as, like, I can trust these people, there was still just, she herself didn't have hope, is what it seemed like it was a lot of. Like, she herself wasn't hopeful, per se. She was the hope. And that would be a heavy burden to carry, to have to, like, be the symbol, be the Mockingjay. And I love how Plutarch handles it, though, of it being like it has to be on her time. And how Effie encouraged her, and even how Haymitch was there for her. Because, like, if you read the books, and especially if you read Sunrise on the Reapings, the newest book of Haymitch's story, like, Haymitch had lost everything. And it was like he didn't have any hope until Katniss came around. And so that's, like, the thing, too, is people are, like, seeing that, like, they see something in her that she doesn't see within herself. And I think that that's an important thing to notice when it comes to hope, is recognizing, like, where our hope may lie. And, you know, for a Christian, our hope is going to rely in God, and knowing that in the end everything will be made perfect. And he uses things for us. So some things that could bring us hope could be, like, each other, could be friends, could be family, could be our pets, could be, you know, things that help keep us going, could be works, could be exercising, could be, like, healthy eating habits, things that make us feel good or whatever. And for the non-Christian, it would be a lot of hope just lying in those earthly things. But saying all of that, because there's this idea within the mental health world of, like, our hope and things being found within ourselves and internally, in the sense of, like, we create our own purpose, we create our own values, etc., and, like, believing within ourselves. And there's this, supposedly it's a Marilyn Monroe quote where she says, believe in yourself, because, like, if you don't, then who will? And the thing that I liked about that was specifically, like, if we're always relying on other people to believe in us, and we're not finding people that are believing in us, then how are we supposed to, like, then what? So saying all that, I know I'm probably, like, all over the place, but I just have so many thoughts when it comes to, like, hope itself. And it's such an important piece. I mean, so many people.
But I think it also an evolution of growing in your own personal life.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, the hope of a baby is different than the hope of a kid.
Yeah.
And the hope of a kid is different than the hope of a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And the hope of the teenager is different than the hope of an adult.
Yeah.
And then the hope of an adult is even different than the hope of a senior adult. And so I think as the life is evolving and life is growing in each individual, I think the hope is changing. And I believe a lot of the hope in the people comes from the wisdom. And wisdom will come from the experience. And experience comes with the time. And so a kid is not going to have the same hope because they haven't lived a lot of life.
Yeah.
And so in the movie, you know, it's a different, the characters are different in a different stage in life than they were when they first were drafted to be part of the games. And so it's the evolving. And so what I would say to anybody out there struggling with hope, I would say, hey, it's just part of life. You just have to be evolving and trusting the system that you will gain the experience to be able to trust in whatever situation that you may be in. And so I think it's a process. And then when we talk about hope is a lot of times is not realistic.
Yeah.
A lot of times hope is something that we wish for, but it's not realistic. It's something. In other words, when we humans think about hope, we think about the perfect scenario. And we don't live in distant land to have the perfect scenario.
Yeah,
we lived in Dallas, Texas, more specific in Fort Worth, Texas, in 2025, where there's traffic, where time doesn't stop, where people are rushing, people are slower, and so we don't live in the perfect world. And so the hope that we have in our lives has to be realistic into our situations. Going back to the Hunger Games, the hope that they had in the first movie is different that they had at the end.
Yeah.
The hope that they had in the first movie was, it started with, I don't want to get drafted and play in the games.
Or reaped.
Then it shifted into, I'm already in the games, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And so the hope was different. And as the movie progressed, the hope was completely different. And it's same thing in our lives. I mean, I remember when growing up, my hope was to get ice cream at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Then as I progressed, I went to high school. My hope was not the ice cream anymore. My hope was to win. And when I got to to a different level, like junior varsity or varsity, my hope was not even to win. My hope was, my own personal hope was to score and to be the star of the game. And so each of the situations were different.
Yeah.
But the hope was evolving. And I think a lot of times what happens in our lives, especially with our generation, that a lot of times we're not realistic with our hope. Either we are too short, or we are extremely off. Like a lot of times we think that, I got a job, and I'm gonna have all the money to go spend. That's not the case, because you have a job now. You have to pay taxes. You have to pay for gas, because how are you gonna get to your job? You have to pay gas. Then during lunchtime you have to spend money to eat. If you don't eat, you don't have energy. And so there's a lot of these variables, these barriers that we don't think about, and those barriers really reflect and sometimes affect the outcome of our hope. And that's why I think we got to be realistic about hope.
And I think that's a really good point of how it shifts throughout each movie, and even just throughout the books, and from the beginning to the end, and how it's this ongoing thing of how hope is going to vary depending on what it is that we're scared of. Or even if we're not scared of something, we can still have hope that things will be okay. And whether it's I hope I can go to this concert, is going to be very different kind of hope than saying, I hope I make it to work safely. And so, because the fears are different. And you had said something, I don't remember exactly verbatim what you had said now, but something that had come to my mind in response is, there's that age-old cliche saying, it's okay to not be okay. and to be like reminding people it's okay if you're sad, it's okay if you're angry, it's okay if you're scared. But I think something else too, and this is something that I've talked about with clients, is sometimes I think we need to realize it's okay to be okay. And that, especially like if we're in a position where variables would be telling us, hey, be sad, be scared, be lonely, be angry, and we're not feeling those things, that we don't have to feel guilty about it. Like, it's okay to feel okay, or to express that we're okay. And thinking of that in regards to the Hunger Games, and I think it's kind of in subtle ways of different characters. Like, I don't know who would be the most, what character would probably fit that the most, but one thing that comes to my mind is like with Finnick Odair, how he seems to be just very chill, and like he gets under Katniss's skin and for a while, and he's just very like almost like whatever, but there's this idea that it's not that he like doesn't care. He doesn't care any less than like Katniss does, or that others do, but he has this sense of, I'm going to continue to live because I know, like, in the way that I can, because I know that something okay may happen. Like, I don't know if he, as I said, if he was maybe like the most perfect character to use for that like description, but, or Plutarch. I think Plutarch would be even better. How he was able to like manipulate his way in behind the games, and he's been around for years, like 50 years. Because if you read Sunrise on the Reaping, Plutarch appears within the capital when Haymitch is reaped and is in the games. And Plutarch doesn't become head game maker. So that's like the 25th Hunger Games that Haymitch is in. And it's the 75th Hunger Games. So 50 years later, that Plutarch becomes head game maker. So for 50 years, Plutarch is behind the scenes and waiting and trying and hoping that he'll be able to destroy the games. He just has to work his way up. He has to be patient. And I think that that's a big thing, too, that we need to think about when it comes to, like, our fear. Like, if we're scared of something, and we see a lot within the games, the people that seem to be the most hopeful and the most calm are also the people that are the most patient. Like, you can tell Katniss does not seem to be a very patient person, and you can tell that she's also, like, it's a struggle for her to really carry that hope, and she manages it, she does. But, like, seeing Plutarch, it's like you meet him and you question him, and then eventually you realize he is a good person. And his thing is, he is patient, and he is waiting it out because he knows that things are going to turn out the way they're supposed to, that they're going to turn out good. And his hope lies in that, and so he is not as afraid because he knows he just has to play his cards right, be smart, and be patient. And I think that it's very easy for us when we're scared, and especially if we're like terrified, our emotions to just be way up and our logic drops. So just like in the games, as you were saying, Mike, that like the characters, their hope changes into a, I just want to stay alive, and so they're literally running for their lives, and they're trying to find shelter, they're trying to find food, they're trying to find water, they're just trying to simply stay alive. So they're not, some of them, like when you look at the start of the games, they rush into the cornucopia where you have the bloodbath takes place. And so it's like some of them may just rush in because they know that they're not going to make it any further, so they might as well just end it all then. And then others, they're impatient. They want to try to get as many people out as possible and assert dominance to be able to carry on. And I think you can see a lot of patience within the games within Katniss, in the sense that she's quick to just climb trees, move along, stay hidden, do her best to just stay out of the way, with just a hope that she's going to stay alive. And saying all that, because I think there's an important piece of patient. Now, I don't know if I would have the amount of I like to think that I'm a very patient person, but to wait 50 years, as Plutarch does, to be able to actually destroy the games, I don't know if I would end up being able to wait 50 years. And who knows, it may have been longer. The prequel, Sunrise on the Reaping, is when he's first introduced. And so if Suzanne Collins ever writes any other book on the Hunger Games, that's a prequel to even before Haymitch. I mean, she did when she wrote the one on President Snow, and Haymitch is not there. And so it's where it's like, okay, it seems to be that this is when Haymitch does for sure appear. But, so for at least 50 years. But maybe you could even say 49, because he recognizes within the first games that Katniss is the one that's supposed to be that simple. Yeah, I don't know if you have any other things to add to all of that as far as hope and the fear and patience too. I know our main points of topic is the hope and the fear, because those are two very real things. I mean, fear, I see it every day. I see it within myself. I see it on social media. I see it within clients. I see it within when people have road rage. I mean, when you're angry, many times, sometimes anger is just anger, but there are many times that anger, your underlying emotion, is really fear. See it every day. See it in our dog when we tried to cut her nails and she was scared of having her nails cut. It's a very real thing that's just there. And adding a little Christian perspective as well. This is one of my favorite facts about the Bible, is the fact that do not be afraid in various contexts is written 365 times. And so it's like God knew, hey, fear is going to be one of the hardest things to overcome, just as Beatty says within Mockingjay. It's going to be one of the hardest things to overcome. So he writes, do not be afraid 365 times. My joke is that means that when we have a leap year, we have one day that we're allowed to be afraid. But that's not how that works. Thing.
I think that, the bottom line is that we can see at the end that the goal or the main idea was that no matter how many people you lose, or better say, no matter what happens in your life, you have to continue. And so I think what I can say is that something that we can learn is that in our lives, no matter how many times we get pushed down, we must get up and continue. There is a reason why, they call us the crystal generation, because we're so fractal. We get pushed around and we lose our hope, and we think that the end is the end of the world. And we have to learn to be able to get pushed around, fall and get up and go. And that is something that Satan wants to do in our lives: take away the hope, take away the last hope that we have, to cripple our lives. And so, I just want to say that if you out there losing your hope, just get up and go. Get up and go. The ultimate goal is not in this life. Our ultimate goal is the life after this life. And we know that there are two options, heaven and hell. And just as the Bible says, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one goes to the Father except through Him. And that is our hope. No matter how many times the government fails us, no matter how many times our dog, our wives, our husbands, our bosses, our jobs, our family, or even our parents will fail us. But there's something out there that won't fail us. And we have to find it. And yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is faith. I think
Yeah.
hope and faith have a lot in common.
You wrap that up so beautifully. Like, I feel like you could easily just kind of make a little closing statement and end it. But I realized one other thing that I wanted to bring up within the Hunger Games. I mean, we could definitely dive more into other little details and even like dissect each movie individually. But one of the other big things is I feel like they do a good representation of what it looks like to be a high functioning alcoholic within Haymitch. How he drinks regularly. He's definitely not like a sober person. He's depressed. He's had his family taken away from him. And the only woman he ever loved taken away from him. And he turns to alcohol. And just I think it might have been Hunger Game Mockingjay Part 2. One of them. Maybe it was Mockingjay Part 1. Maybe it was Catching Fire. I don't remember. But it was one of those three. Where Haymitch says to Katniss, he's like, "Wake up, sweetheart, like, you never get off this train." I don't remember how he says it exactly, but he's saying her, and she's just like, "I just want to be done." I think it's Catching Fire. He's like, "You never get off this train." He's like, that every year they're going to drag you out to be a mentor, and every year your private life becomes theirs, and every year everything gets, like, broadcasted. And the way he ends up coping is through alcohol, and you see him start to become sober at the very, very end, at the end of Mockingjay Part 2. But saying that because, I mean, alcohol is one of the things that is so common for people to turn to. They're scared. I've seen people say that, like, yeah, I realized I'm most confident or most happy when I'm drinking. It's like, that's not okay. Like, we shouldn't be turning to substances just to find confidence or just to find happiness or just to realize, oh, this is when I'm hopeful. And I think that's an important thing to notice too, is because, yeah, he's able to continue that logic. He's able to continue to fight for justice. He's able to continue to support Katniss and to be present and to get her sponsors and to do a really good job. But in the end, you see that he himself is not okay. He's drowning out all of his own sorrows, all of his own pain. And it's that realization that how can he truly and fully support Katniss through her pain if he's drowning out his own? Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because, I don't know, I think they do a fairly good job at and just show. I mean, there's so many other things within the Hunger Games that can be touched on as well, like grief, for sure, love, family dynamics, so many things that can be touched on. But yeah, that hope and fear are the two main things, and then of course, how you were saying hope and faith very much go hand in hand. They're very synonymous in many ways. Yeah. Any other parting words or comments or thoughts or questions? Anything that you have at all?
Yeah, I would say just life will life has to continue.
Mm-hmm.
No matter if there's death, losses,
Mm-hmm.
penalties, whatever it is, life needs to continue. Uh, and we must continue to live our lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. I'll add this one little quote, which is from an NF song. NF, he has this line where he says, "The world don't stop just because I'm in a bad mood." I think it's important to notice or note is that it can be difficult and it can be scary. And that's where, if you're finding yourself really struggling, and if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, well, that's all fine and dandy, or that's easier said than done, or that's not how all this works. I mean, there's so much more that can be said into this, but The Hunger Games, each one of the movies, 10 out of 10. The books especially. It's such a unique story. If you're not familiar, like if you've never read the books or never watched the movies, it's very interesting for sure. But there's a lot in it that I love, that I think can be relevant to our lives, even though the story itself is very fake. Like I don't know how anyone could get away with having an actual Hunger Games take place. But on to say that, yes, if you're listening and you're struggling with anything, if you're lost in your emotions, if you're scared, if you're depressed, anxious, seek help for sure. Find a mental health counselor, call a crisis hotline. Don't be afraid. Speaking of fear, I was going to say, don't be afraid to seek out the help you need. And that's the thing, is seeking out help can be scary within itself. And so maybe if you are scared, just do it scared. Seek out that help while being scared. Yeah, I may sound like a broken record, but again, there's so much more that could be said on this. So much more that could be said on fear and hope in general. But I think that kind of covers the synopsis of everything, all the main points. I know I already asked you if you had any other last minute thing, but any closing statement or closing question?
What I would say is God is love.
Yes.
There is no life apart from Him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We can find that in John chapter 33, verse 4.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I hope you enjoy listening. And I'm going to do this one other little thing. So we have so many different episodes already in our minds, of movies that we're wanting to discuss and go into. So, Mike, I have a few different movies I'm just very excited to be able to discuss. So I'm going to... Did we lose connection? Did the Wi-Fi go out? I hope it's still recording. The time is still going, but the internet stopped. Let's see if I just turn that off. See if it reconnects. Okay, I will ask you. I think it's okay. I think we're good. I don't know if the internet. We lost internet for a moment, just there. But the question that I was going to ask you, Mike, is let's decide right now for our listeners or listener, however many people are out there. Give them something to look forward to, something to hope for, which is going to be what the next episode will be about. So I'm going to list 3 different movies that I would be interested in doing next, and you pick which one. So, unless there were so many different ones. Okay, the first thing that came to my mind. well, this one would go together. I'd put Inside Out and Inside Out 2. They would go together, talking about emotions overall and just dissecting those movies. And if it runs out of time, we could do a part 1, part 2, do Inside Out 2. Soul. I'm talking about purpose. I know I had another movie that was on my mind that I was saying how we're going to... Oh, yes. Guardians of the Galaxy and family. And especially looking at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Out of those ones, which one do you want to do next? And then our viewers will know all of these will be talked about. But what's going to be the next episode? You decide.
And the winner is Guardians of the Galaxy.
All right, so you heard it here first, that the next episode, we're going to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, specifically looking at Volume 3, and we're going to talk about family dynamics and friendship. So, I hope you enjoyed listening. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at, I believe it is Ashley_LPCA. So, Licensed Professional Counselor Associate. Feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to leave a comment, question, anything. We hope you enjoyed listening. Bye.
Bye.